want you to picture a room for a second. It's in this sprawling, almost chaotic apartment building, a real rabbit warren of a place.
Okay.
You walk down the hall, you pass all sorts of things, a neighbor with a huge vacuum cleaner, some glass cabinets with weird Masonic stuff in them, maybe a knitting circle, and then you get to a door.
And inside.
Inside is a very frail, elderly man. He's got high blood sugar. He needs a walker to get around, and he hands you something. It's a stack of A4 paper.
Right.
It's typed out, and every single page is in one of those clear plastic sheet protectors. It's all hand-bound, and the title is just Such is Life, the Good Times and the Bad Times.
That image of the plastic protectors, that really gets me. It's not some fancy published book. It's a life preserved with office supplies. It feels so personal and so fragile.
It really is. And the man holding it is Peter Alexander Mehrtens. Now, to his neighbors, he's just the old guy down the hall. But inside those pages is the story of a Luftwaffe pilot. A pilot who survived things that, honestly, you shouldn't be able to survive. And we're not just talking about air combat. We're talking about flying bombers over London, transports into the absolute frozen hell of the Russian front, and maybe the wildest part, surviving an encounter with Hermann Goering while looking like a drowned rat.
See, that's what pulls me in. It's not the combat log. We have plenty of those.
Right.
It's that this document, these pages, they give you a look at the quote-unquote enemy, completely stripped of all the propaganda.
Yeah.
It's a study in memory. The big history books give you troop movements and ideology, but Peter's typed pages, they give you hangovers, stolen golf balls, and the smell of burning gasoline. It's a micro-history of a huge catastrophe.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack those pages and see the war through his eyes. And I think we have to start with where he came from. He wasn't your stereotypical Nazi fanatic. He was just a kid from Berlin.
Baptized with water from the river Spree, as he put it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Born right after World War I.
And that background is so important. His father was a major in the Pioneer Corps from the First War. Peter called him one of the old Kaiser's men.
Which implies a whole worldview, right?
Oh, absolutely. Prussian, rigid, this kind of old-school 19th century sense of honor. It's a very, very different brand of authoritarianism from what was coming with the Nazis.
You really get a sense of that difference from how he describes Berlin in his childhood. The political street marches, in the 20s and early 30s, he talks about them like they were sports matches.
Like it was entertainment.
Totally. You'd have the Red Front communists marching on one street, the Nazis on another, and Peter was just a kid watching. He even says vendors were selling badges to the crowd, Red Front, Heil Hitler, to the same people. It was just merchandise.
It really suggests that for him as a boy, the politics was just background noise. It was all theater.
Yeah.
But his education was the complete opposite of that chaos. He went to the Lichterfeld Military Cadet School.
Which he described as Dickensian.
Grim is an understatement, I think.
No family visits, incredibly strict. But he saw this change in 1933 when Hitler became chancellor. He said his teachers, who'd been hiding their Nazi party badges under their lapels, suddenly, they just flipped them out for everyone to see.
That's the moment the institutions are captured, right there. But what's so interesting is that Peter never seems to get swept up in the ideology.
Yeah.
He joins the Hitler Youth Flying School. Yeah, but the subtext is he did it because it was the only way to get into a plane.
He just wanted to fly. He was 13 when he started. That was his only motivation, not the ideology.
But that one single focus, just wanting to fly, it gets him into some serious trouble before the war even really kicks off.
Ah, yes. The hangover incident. He was working at the Weser Flug factory in Bremen, learning how to build Stukas. And this story, I had to read it twice. The severity of it is just mind-boggling.
It's absurd, but it's also terrifying.
It's
a perfect example how a totalitarian state works.
Okay, so picture this. It's the morning after a birthday party. Peter's 19. He wakes up with a massive headache. We've all been there.
No.
He just decides, nope, not going to the factory today. He doesn't call in sick. He just rolls over and goes back to sleep.
In any normal job, you get a warning. Maybe get fired.
Not here. The SS shows up at his door. They arrest him, haul him in front of an SS Hauptsturmführer, and the file on the desk doesn't say missed work. It says sabotage.
And that's the leap, isn't it? In that kind of system, your labor, your body, it belongs to the state. By not showing up because of a hangover, you aren't just lazy. You are actively harming the Reich's rearmament. It's treason.
And Peter describes the sheer terror of it. He's a teenager, he's hungover, and he's standing in front of a man who can, with the stroke of a pen, have him executed or sent to a camp.
He says he cried. He groveled.
He did. He said, quote, "A decent grovel and the hint of a tear could work wonders." And it did. He got off with a warning, but he had to swear personal loyalty to the Führer.
Which he calls nonsense like that in his memoirs. He saw it purely as a transaction. He said the words to save his own skin. It wasn't some ideological conversion.
It's the perfect summary of his attitude, isn't it? Just play the game, say what they want to hear, and live to see another day.
Exactly.
So he survives the SS, he gets his pilot's wings, and he's off to the Western Front in late 1940. He wanted to be a fighter pilot, but, and I love this little detail, he failed his Stuka training.
Why was that?
The dive bombing made him throw up.
Motion sickness. A bit of a career killer for a dive bomber pilot. So he ends up in Heinkel 111s and the G-52 transports instead.
Yep. He gets posted to France, and this is where the story takes a turn for the bizarre. They're occupying France, and they get their hands on these looted railway wagons from Dunkirk.
The spoils of war.
Right. Wagon 1 has cigarettes and booze. Standard stuff. Wagon 2 has cloth, also useful. But wagon number 3. Wagon 3 is filled to the ceiling with golf balls.
Thousands of them. And you have to remember, golf was not a big thing in Germany in 1940.
He says they had absolutely no idea what they were. They didn't know the sport. They didn't know what you did with these little white balls. So you have these Luftwaffe pilots just dumping them in fields. He says French towns were suddenly flooded with golf balls. It's this moment of complete cultural confusion in the middle of an invasion.
It's a funny story. But I think those moments serve a real psychological purpose. For us, reading it, it humanizes them.
Yeah.
But for the soldiers, I think focusing on the weirdness of golf balls is a way to not think about the fact that you're about to fly over England and probably get shot at.
That's a good point, because the shift from that almost comedy to the reality of the Battle of Britain it's jarring. At first, he describes the air war with this weird kind of gentlemanly feel. He talks about having a human moment over the channel. A British Hurricane pilot flies up next to his bomber. The Hurricane's out of ammunition.
And Peter sees him.
Peter sees him. The British pilot sees Peter, and Peter just waves. And the British pilot waves back. It's like something out of a movie. But then you turn the page, and that whole idea of chivalry just disappears. He talks about his wireless operator, a veteran named Willie. Experienced guy, but the stress just broke him. Over Kingston, Willie just opened the hatch and jumped out of the plane.
That is the reality of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
The jump from the waving pilot to the suicidal crewmate. The gentleman's war was a myth, and it fell apart fast.
Willie actually survived the jump, believe it or not. But the crew's reaction back on the ground, it wasn't sympathy. It was this really dark humor. They were joking, "Who's going to fly with you now? Better strap your boys to the seats."
It's a defense mechanism. It has to be. If you let yourself feel how horrific that is, you can't get back in the cockpit the next day.
And the physical danger was constant. He gets hit by shrapnel in his eye over the Isle of Wight. He lands, he goes to the surgeon, and the medicine is just primitive. The surgeon takes a pair of pliers and just pulls the metal out of his eyeball. No mention of anesthetic. Just pliers.
It's brutal. But the real defining moment for him in the West comes in March 41. He's shot down over the channel. His co-pilot, his best friend, Werner Moose, is killed instantly.
Head split open by flak. Peter ditches the plane in the water. He's floating in a raft, freezing, traumatized, and eventually a German destroyer picks him up.
And this leads to maybe the most unbelievable part of the whole memoir.
It has to be. He gets back to his base, and he looks awful. He's bandaged, he's soaked, his uniform is ruined. And who happens to be doing a surprise inspection?
Reich Marshal Hermann Goring.
The head of the Luftwaffe himself. A man obsessed with appearance, with the image of his pilots. Peter tries to hide in the back, but his commander shoves him to the front.
Of course.
Going stops, looks him up and down, and says, "You look shocking." Now, most people would just faint. But Peter, he just looks at the second most powerful man in the entire Third Reich and says, "Well, I have just been in the water."
The sheer audacity of that, it's incredible. But Goring, he loved it. It played right into his image of the tough, rugged airman.
Loved it. He promotes Peter on the spot, gives him the Iron Cross Second Class, and tells him to get a new uniform, quote, on his account.
And Peter actually took him at his word.
He took it literally. He went to the most expensive tailor in Berlin, picked out the best fabric, and sent the bill straight to Luftwaffe headquarters, marked attention, Hermann Goring.
And they paid it. They actually paid it. It's this brilliant little act of bureaucratic rebellion. But, you know, we can't let the charm of that story completely overshadow the grief.
No, you're right, because right after this, Peter takes a plane, unauthorized, risking another court-martial, and he flies Werner's widow over the exact spot in the channel where her husband had died.
That image Looking down at the gray water with your best friend's widow, it just grounds the whole thing, doesn't it? It reminds you that the funny Goering suit story is really just papering over a huge trauma.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And if the Western Front had these weird moments of chivalry and luxury suits, the next chapter, it's just a straight descent into hell, Operation Barbarossa.
The invasion of Russia. And this is where the entire tone of his memoir changes. No more waving pilots, no more tailored suits. Peter remembers hearing Goebbels on the radio announce the invasion. He said the reaction in his squadron wasn't cheering.
It was dead silence.
Dead silence. And someone whispered, "Is he going mad?" They knew. They knew what Russia would be.
And Peter was flying the Junkers 52, the Iron Annie. The soldiers had another name for it.
The corrugated coffin.
The corrugated coffin, and his descriptions of the cold. It actually makes you feel cold reading it. We're talking minus 20, minus 40, sometimes minus 52 degrees Celsius.
At those temperatures, machines just stop working. Oil freezes solid. Metal gets brittle. He describes having to pour raw gasoline on the engine's exhaust stubs and light it on fire, just hoping the engine block would warm up enough to turn over before the entire plane exploded.
And the human side of that cold, standing around these heating drums, which were just oil barrels with fires in them. He said your front would be burning hot, but your back would be literally freezing solid. You had to keep rotating like a kebab just to stay alive on the tarmac.
The lines between friend and foe just blurred into nothing. There's that story where he crash lands near the front. He and a war correspondent are walking through the snow, and they start taking machine gun fire. From their own side.
From the Germans. They thought Peter was a Russian spy. The paranoia was so high, they just assumed anyone walking toward them was the enemy. The war correspondent had to rip off his white winter camo to show his uniform underneath.
And then he walks up to the German commanding officer and
Just punches him square in the face.
it's such a primal way to prove you're on the same side, isn't it? Like, only a fellow German officer would have the guts to punch me, so you must be real. But that paranoia was justified. The whole front was collapsing.
And as the retreat begins, that's when the memoir becomes almost unbearable to read. The evacuation of Kiev, Peter's flying wounded men out, the Red Army is closing in. He says flat out, in Russia, a Red Cross meant nothing. The panic on the ground was.
It sounds like something from a nightmare.
Men were clinging to the outside of his plane, hanging onto the wings, the landing gear, anything they could grab. Peter's in the cockpit, trying to taxi, but it can't take off like that.
And so, the military police.
The military police had to shoot their own soldiers, shooting them off the wheels of the plane so it could leave.
The moral injury of that, watching your own side shoot your own soldiers so you can save a different group of soldiers, it's the total breakdown of everything.
Peter points to a photo of himself from that time and just says to the interviewer, "I'm that skinny kid." He looks completely hollowed out.
In France, there were rules, there were suits. In Russia, it was just survival, at any cost.
And then just as you think he's going to die in the snow, you get this massive whiplash. He gets a transfer.
The ant intervention.
You can never underestimate a well-connected ant. His new Field Marshal Milch. Some strings were pulled, and just like that, Peter is plucked out of the frozen mud and sent back to Berlin.
And his new job is a courier pilot.
The contrast is just sickening, really. He goes from the corrugated coffin to a sleek Messerschmitt 108. He's flying generals and Nazi bigwigs around Europe, staying in luxury hotels in Paris and Vienna, while his old squadron is probably being wiped out at Stalingrad.
He calls it paradise. But you have to wonder, it feels more like a fever dream. Living this life of luxury, chauffeuring the very men who orchestrated the disaster he just barely escaped. It's a strange, almost guilty kind of survival.
Which brings us right back to where we started, back to that rabbit warren apartment. The handsome young man in the tailored suit is now an old man who can barely walk. The interviewer notes how Peter just dismisses his own suffering. He keeps saying, forget it, when they ask if he needs a rest or some water.
There's that moment where his stepson taps the homemade book and says, "Not a bad story either."
Yeah.
And Peter just sort of chuckles. The title, Such is Life, it feels less like a bold statement and more like a long, tired sigh of resignation.
It is, but it's also a testament to just how random survival is. Why did he make it when so many others didn't? Was it skill? Partly. But it was also the hangover that saved him. The ant who knew someone, the random whim of Herman going.
We look at history and we look for patterns, for the great men, the decisive battles. But Peter's story reminds you that the actual experience of history is made up of these tiny, granular moments. It's pliers in an eye. It's golf balls in a field. It's a punch in the face.
And it makes you think about how fragile these stories are, the physical object itself, those A4 pages and plastic protectors. If that interviewer hadn't found him, that story just vanishes. It ends up in a dumpster when the apartment is cleared out.
That's a terrifying thought. How many other stories like that are out there right now, sitting in a drawer in a homemade binder? Stories that could completely change how we see things.
Probably more than we'd like to admit.
Yeah.
So here's the thought I want to leave you with. We trust history books because they're bound in leather and they sit on library shelves. But maybe the most honest history is written on a typewriter full of typos and hidden away in a rabbit-warren apartment somewhere. If you know someone with a story like this, someone who speaks in anecdotes instead of dates, maybe it's time to go buy some plastic sheet protectors and write it all down.
Before it's gone for good.
That's it for this deep dive into the life of Peter Alexander Mehrtens. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.